Hello, my scary friends. Okay. Let's start telling the Dogman story. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. Michael was that one friend that if you saw me, Michael would be the two. We were either at his house or mine. Both of our parents accepted it just fine, and it was almost like we both had an extra family. So when I found out Michael was missing, naturally I was a wreck. I was also terrified, as I know what took him. I told our parents and the police what had happened, but they never did believe me. This took place back in 2003. It was summer break and Michael was over at my house. We were bored just playing video games in my room when Michael came up with an idea for something fun to do. Let's go the old train bridge behind Shakers at night. He practically shouted. What? Why? I asked. Because heard Chris Bennett say him and Charles went there and they saw a weird looking Dogman or something. He seemed pretty excited about this horrible idea. I thought for a moment about whether it was a good idea or not. After a few seconds, I decided it wasn't a bad idea. After all, nothing bad happens in our tiny town. Sure, why not? I rolled my eyes. What are we gonna tell our parents? You tell your mom and dad you're coming to my house, and I'll tell mine I'm going to yours. He said proudly of his little plan. I knew it'd work. They don't even bother to call Michael's parents anymore because of how often we slept at each other's house. Alright then, what time? I have to admit, the idea of sneaking out sounded pretty fun. Midnight, meet at the entrance. Okay, see you then, I said as he grabbed his bag and got ready to leave. After he left, I got a bag around with some snacks and snuck my dad's flashlight. The idea seemed better and better as time went, and I found myself pacing around until it was time to tell my parents I was going to Michael's. Alright, just call when you get the sweetie. My mom hugged me goodbye. I will see you tomorrow, love you. I yelled as I ran to the front door, closing it loudly behind me. I ran the whole 5 blocks to the old train bridge, excited to get our fun night started. Michael was already there and waved excitedly as I rounded the corner into sight. Let's get this shit started, he shouted while doing a little dance. I laughed and danced along. We were so thrilled about the idea there was something supernatural we could possibly see that we didn't even think of what we would do if whatever we were looking for could be dangerous. We'd both heard of the Dogman plenty of times throughout our lives. It's sort of a legend here in Michigan. After a few hours of just talking and hanging out, we decided it was time to get quiet and listen for anything that sounded out of place. We sat quietly for over an hour hearing absolutely nothing before we started to get bored. Chris is a liar, dude, Michael said, bummed. As soon as he finished his sentence, we heard a twig snap, sending our heads sapping in the direction we heard the noise. Everything was so quiet that it gave me goosebumps. Even at my young age, I knew it was too quiet. Normally you could hear crickets and frogs ringing throughout the night, but there was nothing. Michael must have noticed it too, because he had the same look of confusion on his face that I did. Snap. Another twig broke, only this time closer. My heart was beating through my chest as I immediately started to regret our plan. Michael grabbed a nearby stick to use to defend ourselves, just in case. Hey boys. A loud, very creepy whisper came from the bushes across the trail. My blood froze and a deep sense of dread filled my entire body. That voice did not sound normal at all. Like someone hadn't spoken a word in their life, but somehow figured out how to talk for the first time. I felt like I was gonna pass out from how scared I was, but I didn't move a muscle. Michael looked equally terrified and sat just as still. I noticed a slight movement coming from behind the tree and nearly shit my pants. We were actually gonna see the famous Dogman and I was utterly terrified. This was by far the worst idea we'd ever had. A head slowly emerged from behind the trees about 5 feet away and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Its eyes were only spaced maybe half an inch apart, so wide open and looked completely insane. The smile on this thing was so wide it should have split its cheeks wide open. Its teeth looked like a person's, only there was way too many and too big. Its head was halfway in between a man's and a dog's. It was maybe 7 or 8 feet tall, I don't know for sure, but it was huge. Out of nowhere a stick flew in the air and hit the thing square in the face. I sat shocked as its smile slowly faded into a look of pure rage. "Michael, what the hell?" I shouted as I got up to run. Michael screamed and was right on my heels. I'd never ran so fast in my life. We heard what sounded like a wolf howl followed by branches snapping and heavy footsteps. The chase was on. We were running and screaming our heads off. The thing was laughing and snarling as it got closer and closer. We ran towards Michael's house as he lived closer and didn't have far to go. Maybe 2 blocks. I didn't think we had a chance in hell at making it. I noticed a few porch lights flick on as we ran and screamed at the top of our lungs. "What's going on out there?" a man's voice shouted. As soon as we heard his voice, the heavy footsteps that were now right on our heels stopped. We kept running until we got to Michael's front door, banging on it furiously to get his parents to unlock it. After they finally opened it, we ran in, bawling our eyes out, talking at the same time telling his parents what happened. Obviously they didn't believe us and said we possibly pissed off a black bear and were lucky to get away. They were furious that we both lied about where we were going and called my parents. They were pissed too and came and picked me up, lecturing me the whole ride home. They didn't believe me either and grounded me. Once home I went straight to my room and passed out soon after. Sometime in the middle of the night though I woke up to a tapping on my window. Confused I rolled over, half expecting to see Michael, but what I saw gave me nightmares for weeks. The creature from earlier was staring through my window, smiling that awful grin, only this time its face was covered in blood. "Mom!" I screamed as loud as I could, crying hysterically. After they came running I told them what I saw and got yelled at again. I begged and begged for them to believe me, but they wouldn't, shutting my door behind them. The next morning I woke up to what sounded like my dad shouting and my mum crying. I went downstairs to see what was going on. As soon as my mum has seen me, ran over to me and squeezed me tightly, apologizing profusely. "What, Mum? What's wrong?" I was starting to cry too as I had a horrible pit in my stomach ache. "Michael is missing. His bedroom window was smashed and they only found traces of blood on the window." She barely choked through tears. My body went numb and tunnel vision set in. My best friend wasn't just missing, he was dead. I knew what happened. He was the one that threw the stick at the thing, so it came back for revenge. It came to my house to show me the fresh blood, taunting me. After tons of police interviews and months of searching and finding nothing, they determined Michael was dead and closed the case. There was a funeral held for him and it was one of the hardest times of my life. I'm 29 now and I still think about Michael and how horrible his death must have been. After our encounter, I became obsessed with the Dogman, and after research, I've read that the Dogman only attacks if provoked. It came back for Michael because he attacked it. If he would have just run, I fully believed he would still be alive today. So if anyone ever runs into the Dogman, just whatever you do, don't provoke the thing, walk or run away, you just might live.